Annie gets into trouble. "Where are you going, Annie?" called Mark as he saw Annie running down the road. "To the shops," said Annie. "My granny's ill, and I'm going to buy her some violets. I've got sixpence, look. I took it out of my money box." "Sixpence? That won't buy many violets," said Mark scornfully. "Spend it on sweets. You'll get more sweets than you will violets." "No, my granny likes flowers," said Annie. "She loves daffodils best of all in the springtime, but they're so dear." "Daffodils? Oh, I can show you plenty of those," said Mark at once. "I expect you can. In somebody's garden," said Annie. "Don't be silly." "No, in a wood, I mean," said Mark. "Honestly, Annie, they're growing under the trees, as wild as you like. I saw them yesterday." "Well, why didn't you pick them then?" said Annie. "Because I don't waste my time picking flowers," said Mark. "What do I want with daffodils? Listen, Annie, if I show you where those wild daffodils grow, so that you can pick a bunch for your granny, will you buy some sweets with that sixpence and share them with me?" "All right," said Annie, "but I'll be very cross with you if you take my sweets and don't show me those wild daffodils. I shall tell my mother if you cheat me." "Oh, come on," said Mark. "Let's go and buy the sweets first. The sweet shop's on the way to this daffodil place." So they went first to the sweet shop, and Annie bought a bag of toffees. The two divided them outside the shop, and Mark put half in his pockets. "Now, show me the daffodils," said Annie. Mark set off down the road, round the corner, up a hill, and down again. They passed some very big houses, and then Mark led Annie along beside a low fence. "There you are," he said, pointing to where clumps of yellow daffodils grew under the shade of big trees. "See? All growing wild in the grass." "But they can't be wild," said Annie. "Why is this fence round the wood? It must be to keep people out." "There's a gate in the fence round the corner," said Mark. "If it's open, it means that anyone can go into the wood and pick. You wait here. I'll go and see if it's open. If it is, I'll give you a shout." He ran off round the corner. He came to a little gate, fast shut. He undid it and swung it open. Then he shouted loudly, "Come on, Annie, it's all right, the gate's open." Annie ran round the corner and came to where the little gate was swinging to and fro. "See? What did I tell you?" said Mark. "Now, you go and pick a nice big bunch." "It seems funny to be able to pick as many daffodils as I like, even when they're growing wild in the grass like that," said Annie. "You come and pick some for your mother too, Mark." "No, thanks. It's a waste of time picking flowers. I told you that before," said Mark. "Well, I'll leave you to it. Goodbye." He ran off at top speed, putting a toffee into his mouth and grinning to himself. Silly Annie. Anyone could take her in. Fancy believing him when he said that if the gate was open, anyone could go in and pick the daffodils. Well, she would have her daffodils, and he had got his toffees. So, that was fine. Annie was having a fine time picking the lovely golden daffodils. She picked carefully, choosing many that were only half out, knowing that Granny liked to watch them come out slowly and beautifully. "There, I've got about 20, she said at last. "That's enough. I mustn't be greedy. I must leave plenty for other people." She was just picking a few of the long, thin leaves to go with the flowers, when she heard a shout. She turned and saw a girl about her own age. "You stop picking those daffodils! How dare you do that?" shouted the girl. "They're wild ones," called back Annie. "Anyone can pick them when the gate to this wood is open." "You're a thief," said the other girl, coming up looking very angry. "They're our daffodils." "But they can't be if this is just a wood," said Annie. "And Mark Jones said that if the gate to this wood was open, anyone could come in and pick. Anyone." "Well, you come and tell my mother that silly story, and see if she believes you," said the girl. "Though I know you won't. I bet you're a nasty little thief, and will run out of the gate as soon as I yell for her." not a thief, said Annie indignantly. I was told I could pick these. I'll certainly come with you and see your mother. I've not been doing anything wrong. All right, you come then, said the girl, and led Annie through the little wood, up a shady path, and then under an archway of yew into a lovely garden. Annie was surprised. Good gracious, perhaps that wood did belong to someone then. Somebody was weeding in the garden. Mother, said the girl, running to her, I've caught a daffodil thief. Look at all the flowers she's picked. She's a thief, isn't she? I'm not, said Annie, very cross. I tell you, Mark Jones said anyone could come into the daffodil wood if the gate was open, and it was. I'm very, very sorry if it's not a free wood. Please take the daffodils. But I'm not a thief. She is, Mother. She is, isn't she? Cried the girl. Be quiet, Jenny, said her mother. No, I don't think this child is a thief. She would have run away if so. Why did you want the daffodils, my dear? Only because my granny's ill, said Annie. I took sixpence out of my money box to buy her violets. But Mark said these daffodils were for anyone to pick if the gate was open. I see, said Jenny's mother. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. You give me your sixpence, and you can buy the daffodils. Then you can give them to your granny. I haven't got the sixpence, said Annie. Oh, but you said you had, said Jenny's mother. She's a fibber! She's a fibber! Said Jenny. I'm not, said Annie fiercely. First you call me a thief, and now you call me a fibber. I did have a sixpence, but Mark said he would show me the wild daffodils to pick if I'd buy sweets with my sixpence and give him half. So I did. I thought that would be quite fair. Is that the Mark Jones who lives in Dean Street? Asked Jenny's mother. And who is your granny? Granny is Mrs. Oldfield, said Annie. And Mark does live in Dean Street, but I'm sure he really thought the daffodils were wild. I don't think so, said Jenny's mother. This is the third time he has sent people into our wood. He is a very naughty little boy. I know your granny, Annie. She and I have been trying to plan a sale together, you know. Oh, you must be Mrs. Harbin then, cried Annie. Well, I expect you know that my granny's ill, if you know her so well. Yes, I heard she was ill only this morning, said Mrs. Harbin, and I was going to ask Jenny here to pick some of our daffodils to take to her. But perhaps you will take those you picked yourself to her and say they are from me, with my love, and from you too. Will you? Well, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Harbin. Granny will be delighted, said Annie. And please, you don't think I'm a thief or a fibber, do you? I didn't know it was all a trick of Mark's. Oh, won't I be angry with him tomorrow? She said goodbye and went off to Granny's. Oh, that horrid Mark! Tricking her like that. Wouldn't he feel awful when she told him about Mrs. Harbin and what she had said? Her granny was delighted with the daffodils, but Mark was not at all pleased when he heard Annie's tale the next day. He went very red indeed. What did you tell about me, you horrid little sneak? He said. I am not a sneak, said Annie. And what's more, I'm getting tired of being called all kinds of things that I'm not. A thief and a fibber, and now a sneak. I didn't know you were making it all up about the free daffodils in the wood. It was your own fault for being such a cheat. Getting my toffees for nothing, too. You'll be sorry for all this. You see if you won't. Puh, said Mark, and walked off. I shall be sorry. You're the silly one to go and believe all you're told. But Mark was sorry, because Mrs. Harbin and Annie's granny wanted 10 children to go and help with their grand garden sale in May, and Mrs. Harbin went to ask Annie's teacher if there were 10 children in Annie's class that could come and take charge of the donkey rides and the hoopla stalls. "Well, that's awkward," said Miss Brown. "You see, there are 11 children in Annie's class. Here's the list. It would be difficult to leave just one out." Mrs. Harbin glanced down the list. She saw Mark's name there, and looked up at once. "It won't be difficult to know whom to leave out," she said. "I don't want Mark Jones to come." "Oh dear, what has he done?" asked Miss Brown. "I don't think I'll tell you that," said Mrs. Harbin, "but ask Mark if he knows why I don't want him. He'll guess, I'm sure." Yes, Mark did guess. He won't be at the great garden sale. But he has done something rather surprising. He has left a box of chocolates at Annie's house, bought out of his own money, for Annie to raffle at the sale. How odd that somebody so naughty can do something so nice. Annie is very, very pleased.